There are a ton of changes in the new map for Pokemon Unite, so here is everything you need to know about Groudon and the new map, and hopefully as many tips as I can shove in here. It's a long video, so buckle up, buckle in, buckle all of the things. Let's get into this new map and all of the things that I wish I knew right when it dropped before playing like 20 plus hours of it over the past couple days. Tip number one is to not be so hard on yourself or your allies if you can, because this is a brand new map, a brand new meta for everyone. So I think it's going to be a little tricky to figure it out right away, right? There are tons of pros and players like yourself and me, content creators, who are all trying to figure out some of the best things you could do on this map. So give yourself a little grace while you are learning it. But in this video, I'm going to show you a ton of things that I wish I knew right when the map dropped. My second huge tip is about the new spawn timers on the map, and there's so much to get into right here, so this is going to be a chunky part of the video, but I'm going to take you through the top and bottom path, as well as some of the new things happening in the central area or the jungle. So this is going to be a little bit much, but I also think it's pretty important to kind of see what's going on, and I'm going to give you some tips as I go as to how I would be fighting in the top path, bottom path, and so on. All right, heading into lane in the top path, you have the 3 Bunnelby that are right here. And then as you make your way to the top path, at 9 minutes 40 seconds, you have one that spawns here, one that spawns here, and one that spawns here. Obviously, this one is a prime target for the teams to fight over, while these two are sort of the safer ones that you see on the side, right? After these are KO'd, well, it doesn't even matter if they're KO'd, at 9 minutes and 20 seconds, you have the Natus that spawn down here. Go away, Gudra. You have the Natus that spawn here, as well as 2 more Bunnelbys, one here and one here. So again, you sort of have this contested farm in the center, and then the safer farm on the top and on the top of both sides. At 9:10, you have this bunny as well as your safe bunnies back here. So again, a piece of contested farm that you can fight over and a safe piece of farm back behind your goal zone. And then still you have the 8 minutes 50 second spawn of the Swablu Altaria here in the center. It's a lot going on pretty fast, right? But I think the basic thought process of the top path here is you will have your Pokemon move here and try to win this fight, and ideally move here and try to win this fight, while at the same time knowing that there is safe farm that is spawning on both sides. This also does mean that an enemy could avoid a fight right here, walk to some of your safe farm and attempt to take it. But if you look at the map, right, and you look at this spot right here is almost like a line that divides the entire map. Anything right on this line is contestable by both teams. Anything on the other side is much safer and easier for you to secure. Obviously, you want to try to take as much from your opponents as you possibly can. So that's why when there's a spawn here or a spawn here, it's ideal to try to fight over this and take it away from your opponents. Ideally, having some type of good last hit tool in lane. I'll talk more about that in a minute, because I do think winning your lane has become even more important in this new map. Okay, heading to the bottom path here, we've got a similar setup with these Bunnelbys, 3 Bunnelbys now instead of the 2 that spawn here. And at 9 minutes 40 seconds, you're going to have a spawn here on both sides, right? So you're going to have 2 Bunnelby here, and those are the only things that start out spawned, and they're kind of easy to fight over them together. Then 5 seconds later, Indeedee on the top side of both, kind of your safe Indeedee, and then another 5 seconds later, you have 2 more Indeedee near the bottom side of your goal zone, right? So ideally, you're going to look to, again, contest here and then fight over the rest of this stuff. At 9 minutes and 15 seconds, you have 1 Bunnelby that spawns right here, another thing that you can fight over, and then at 9 minutes 10 seconds, just like in the top path, your safe ball toys behind the goal zones will pop up. So as you can see, a lot more farm that sort of slowly makes its way onto the map that you need to fight over. And of course, just like in the top path, you have the 8 minute 50 second spawn of the Swablu Altaria. Again, imagining that dividing line, trying to take everything you can on your opponent's side will give you a huge advantage, and then just making sure they don't take anything from your safe side would be great. If you can, something to keep in mind, usually the bigger, chunkier things on the map are worth more XP. So if you take a look at something like Swablu Altaria, the Altaria is worth more than a Swablu, but I think the 3 Swablu are slightly more than a single Altaria, and the Bunnelbees are good, but an Indeedee is actually worth a little bit more than a Bunnelbee. That's just generally true. The Natus are all actually decent XP. I believe if you get all 3 Natus, it's slightly better than getting a single Bunnelbee. So if you could take away this from your opponent and then get your safe farm, that would be huge. But as you can see in the top and bottom path, it feels like there's a new emphasis on a center contestable piece of farm and then peeling back for some safer farm. Alright, now let's quickly take a look at the jungle here. The jungle is mostly the same at first, right? You have the Xatu, and then everything in the jungle spawns at 9 minutes 45 seconds. You're going to go ahead and clear this all out as quickly as you can, and then head to either the top or bottom path. The interesting thing with this, given that there are so many more spawns that happen up here, there are lots of, great places to fight. For instance, if you can clear your jungle very, very quickly and make it to the top path in time, or the bottom path, to try to influence some of these fights, that would be huge, right? Like if you could be here to try to make sure your team secures these Natus, or you can be here early enough, which you should be able to if you're playing a fast jungler, be here earlier enough to fight over that Bunnelbee right there, you could get huge value. Now, there is this new spawn here in the center, 3 Natus at 9 minutes. I think getting these at 9 minutes could be bait, unless you are insanely fast, you have a ton of experience, you've already helped your top or bottom path, because you do, as a jungler, need to make sure that you are around for one of these fights in the top or bottom path. The Swablu Altaria is so dang important, it's such a huge chunk of experience that it's really important to be around for it. Now, at 8:40, we still have the spawn here of the Baltoys on the kind of your side and your opponent's side of the map. And again, not much has changed in your jungle. You've got kind of the normal rotation of them spawning, but the big change, of course, Regidrago, which I'll talk more about in this video, but Regidrago spawning here at 8 minutes is the new sort of Altaria spawn that would happen. If you don't get the Natus in the center, they will disappear once this is ready to hit the map. And Regidrago is really interesting. When it first dropped on the map, it was unbelievably powerful. It gave way too much team-wide XP, but now Regidrago is going to spawn. It walks between the top and bottom path. It seems to choose it just randomly, whether it's walking top or bottom. I thought it was always walking bottom, but I feel like I've also seen it just kind of walk top. One thing to notice here, on your mini-map, if you don't have vision on Regidrago, you can pan your camera and just get a good idea as to whether the enemies are attacking or not. You also can just notice on your mini-map, if it's walking, that likely means no one is hitting it, right? But this is a new huge objective that you're going to fight over. If you are able to secure this, you get team-wide XP, not as much as it was the day of the map spawning, and you get a scoring buff. This will allow you to score essentially like you have a goal getter on for 60 seconds. You score at double speed. A couple interesting things to point out about Regidrago. I guess we're just talking about Regidrago right now. This is like now tip 3, Regidrago. Regidrago does not recover HP. It doesn't leash and start to recover HP or anything like that. So all the damage that you do to it is going to stick on it. Ideally, you take this away from your opponents, get your team some nice team-wide experience, and at the same time, get you that increased scoring speed. You can see the buff around me right there. And now I'm scoring at double speed on this goal zone. It's a very powerful buff, but not as powerful as it was before. Now here's an interesting thing about Regidrago, continuing to talk about spawn timers on the map. After you KO Regidrago, it could come back. It also could spawn as Altaria. It's on a 90-second spawn timer, so you could see another Regidrago. If you are going to, just like when Groudon is coming to the center of the map, you actually will see a timer start to tick down for 30 seconds right here. If it is not going to be Regidrago, you will not see that timer, and instead the Altaria will spawn in the center of the map. I don't know exactly what influences which one is going to spawn. It might just be like the Regis, which is random, which we will talk about here in a moment, but I feel like we need to finish our Regidrago conversation for a bit. Goudra, get out of here, buddy. All right, and as you can see, we have the Altaria spawn here in the center. We got no timer on the map. We were just waiting to see which one would come up. Again, if it was going to be Regidrago, I would have seen a 30-second timer in the center of the map. Now, after I KO these Altaria, we still could have another Regidrago hit the map. We don't know that it's going to stay Altaria. It could turn into a Regidrago. In 60 seconds, we'll know if it's Regidrago because we'll see a timer, but in 90 seconds, another piece will spawn here in the center. All right, the next spawn timer to talk about are the top and bottom Regis, right? The big change here is that it is now random whether you're going to get Regieleki in the top or bottom path, right? Which is pretty huge. So you may get Regieleki top, you may get Regieleki bottom. However, one thing is for sure, after it is already spawned in the top or bottom path, that is where it will stay for the rest of the game. So if Regieleki happens to spawn bottom down here, you will always have Regieleki in the bottom path. If the Regis spawn top, you will always have Regice, etc., Steel, Rock in the top path. So once you know that right away, you know it for the rest of the game. You could still have Regi spawning here in the top path, Regieleki just like normal, and the Regis in the bottom path just like normal. You also can have it turned around the other way. So I guess it's time to talk a little bit about your goals because they have changed a bit here. As you saw with this top goal, it had 70 points in it. If you take a look at the bottom goal right here, it actually can take 80 points before it breaks. When you move on to our tier 2s here, this one takes 120 points before it's broken. So you could have full pockets scoring in double time at Groudon and not break this goal zone. If you look at this goal up here, only 90 points. So they've reprioritized how the goals are able to be broken in this. Still, when you break the top or bottom goal, you're going to unlock like a huge chunk of safe farm for your opponents. Top, you're going to unlock some Indeedis, right? You can see these two Indeedis spawn right here. Bottom, you're going to unlock the same thing. Top, you should be unlocking 3 Indeedis. I guess that one just was already taken by the Goudra right there. But breaking the bottom goal, you will also unlock Indeedis for your opponents. You unlock more experience top. However, given that the goals break a lot faster, I think there are a lot of interesting strategies to consider when it comes to breaking goals and scoring, which I do need to talk more about because I think it's changed a lot on this map. So now that you know which path the Elekis are going to be in, you can decide how you want to play the rest of the map, and you can decide which Eleki you want to focus on. I do think there are actually some interesting considerations on the new map to think about with scoring. So I'll talk more about this in a minute. However, it does feel like scoring, because of how Groudon functions, is actually extremely different, and you may want to prioritize something like Regieleki over some of the bottom Regis. In general, winning an objective is better for your team than not, so I would take either one I could get, but I've had many matches where I'm already scoring in my opponent's home goal zone well before Groudon hits the map. Next, let's talk about Groudon, because Groudon is a very different fight. As you can see, we've lost a lot of the tall grass that is around this fight. Even down here in these L bushes, they are a lot smaller. A lot of people have said the L bushes are on Ozempic right now. And we can see that this tall grass has stayed, this tall grass has stayed, right? There are actually multiple spaces on the map where the tall grass is gone. Groudon hits the map at 2 minutes, just like Zapdos, just like Rayquaza. However, this fight feels like it has a very different texture to some of the fights as before, where before backcapping felt like very, very grief. There are, I feel like, often great situations to backcap in this fight. One of the reasons being, if your opponent has only 2 Pokemon up and they can't reliably take Groudon in this moment, you have a good opportunity to score, and even if they get Groudon, they're only getting a couple shields that you can then take from your opponents. So let's talk about the Groudon shield here. Groudon actually fights a little bit different than Rayquaza does, so you'll see kind of different moves from it. It still has a big area effect attack right here, and it actually recovers HP if you step out of range too long. No, Goudra, I'm trying to do a video, buddy. Oh my gosh. Get out of here. Jerk. All right. Groudon will start to recover HP, of course, if you're not near it, not able to do damage to it. Once you get Groudon low enough, it doesn't actually do the same burst thing that Rayquaza did, right? It does have that burst right there, and it does feel like it's a little less forgiving when it comes to how long you've been hitting it. Like, it feels like it recovers HP a little bit faster. Goodra, you are ruining my life right here. I'm recording a video. Yeah, take him out, Groudon. But once it gets low enough, you can look for a secure. And then once you get it, you get the very important Groudon buff. You also get a shield. Let's talk about the Groudon buff. The Groudon buff is different from the Ray shield. You do get a shield, but the buff does not go away once your shield goes away. The buff goes away once you are KO'd. And it doesn't just go away, it is transferred to your opponent, the one who KO'd you. There's a lot of strategy around how many of your allies you can get the Ray buff, excuse me, I called it the Ray buff, the Groudon buff on by KOing them effectively, right? Like, let's say I'm an Absol and I KO 5 members of the enemy team. That's great, but I'm the only one who gets that Groudon buff. Ideally, you'd want a few members of your team to pick up that buff so they could go score. Now, again, this buff is not uninterruptible scoring. Uninterruptible? That works. Uninterrupted scoring. You can get stunned, you can get knocked up, you can take damage and stop scoring. You cannot score as easily with the Groudon buff, which changes the game in massive ways. You can have a defender like a Cursed Trevenant on a goal zone, defending a goal zone against multiple enemies trying to score with a Groudon buff because they can't score fast enough while you are dealing damage to them, even though you are not stunning them in that moment. This is extremely important and something you need to recognize. Just because you have the buff does not mean you are going to score. And if you make a mistake and you go towards the opponent's goal zone and they KO you, you now not only didn't score, you gave up that massive advantage to your opponents. The end game is so different now because of this, that I do think there's a lot of different decisions that you can make around the end fight. Let's move on to another tip here for a moment. I want to talk about scoring. We showed the goal zones there for a moment. The top and bottom path are different, and I do think there's a consideration to be made for how much you are trying to score in the new map. I think you are going to be scoring early and often, as much as you can. Ideally not breaking that early goal zone if you can, deny your opponent some experience. But at the same time, I have found that games are so much better and way different from Rayquaza, where if you have a nice score lead against your opponents, you can play very differently around the Groudon fight and still win a lot of your matches. So I would recommend taking opportunities in the match to peel off and go score. Obviously, there are a few things you could be doing in a match. You can be farming, right? KOing wild Pokemon on the map. You could be farming something from your opponent, like taking something contestable away from your opponents. You could be going towards an objective. You could be fighting enemies, or you could be looking to score. I do think there are many Pokemon like speedsters and things like that want to take opportunities to score more often on this map, because the score advantage could lead to a huge advantage later on. There also is that new objective that's spawning in the map, Regidrago. And just like the top and bottom objectives, if you know your opponents are heading to it, you can take this opportunity to fight them, but you could also take this opportunity to score in that moment. There have been many matches where we know our opponents are moving towards Regidrago, and we recognize we can't really contest it right now, but what we could do is have multiple members of our team peel off to the top or bottom goal zone, put in a ton of points, and get us closer to a possible victory as the match goes on. I think scoring is very different, and I talked about it a little bit with the Groudon fight. I think the Groudon fight does change a lot. There are lots of opportunities where I think, well, we have a little bit of an advantage in this fight. We don't have good secure potential around Groudon right now, and having one of our allies that's quick and easy to get around, like a Dodrio or something like that, peel off to a goal zone, score really quick, and come back is actually pretty great. It's not as troll as it used to be. Now, if the enemy's all 5 at Groudon and they're ready to fight, and one of your defender is off scoring, that's going to be pretty tough for your team. However, it doesn't mean the match is over, which moves on to my next tip. Don't surrender right away just because Groudon is gone. Now, if Groudon is gone and they've broken all your goal zones and they're scoring in your main base, the match could be over, right? However, this has a very different end game than Ray. I have won matches where my opponents were moving to score after securing that objective. We KO'd multiple members of the enemy team. We ran towards their goal zones, continued to score, and KO'd other members of the team and won the game. The end fight is much more dynamic now, so don't surrender right away. You really need to play out this end game a lot so we can understand what is like, clearly it's over, they've scored 500 in the main, or what is actually, hey, they scored in one of our goals and now they're pushing towards our main, but if we KO one or two of them right here, we're right back in this thing. My next tip is about your lanes, top or bottom lane. You want to make sure that you are winning your lane. With so much more experience on the map, it really does feel like it's very valuable to win your lane, and if you do, you begin to snowball the match and win more and more and more. On this map, I feel like it's win more, lose more, right? So when I say that you want to win your lane, ideally you want to be in lane with good secure, right? Like you think of a Pokemon like Slowbro, great secure. You think of a Pokemon like Gardevoir, pretty weak secure, right? And you want to be there with a Pokemon that is able to get an advantage early. You think about something like Slowbro, level 4, it evolves and gets a move. It can run EXP share and still do very well. Then you think of a Pokemon like Delphox. Delphox takes a little while, not even a little while, a long time to get online. It has to get multiple levels before it gets moves that it can really contest a lot of the farm with. If you are in lane with Gardevoir, Delphox, and on the other side, you are looking at even, you know, an Espeon and a Slowbro, 9 times out of 10, I'd say you're going to lose that lane, and losing that lane is going to put you further and further and further behind. With so much more experience, every time you are losing, you are missing out on it, and your opponents are gaining it. So I would highly recommend to play good Pokemon in lane, things with good last hit, good secure. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the jungle, because I mentioned it earlier when we were going through the timers. I really do think having a Pokemon that clears farm very, very quickly is extremely important on this new map. There's so much experience, right? You go through your jungle. If you're fast, you can make it to your top path really quick or your bottom path really quick, help them fight and win in one of those lanes, get a level advantage for them there. You can then move on to the Natus, clear that. You can win the Altaria fight. Having a Pokemon that is able to clear farm fast and get places on the map is extremely important. I actually thought with less tall grass, speedsters might be getting a nerf on this new map, but I think speedsters are probably more important than ever on the new map, or at least if it's not a speedster, something that clears farm quickly so you're able to make it to different objectives, different fights, different, you know, pockets of experience that spawns. The team that makes it to all of these moments faster and clears it faster is going to get ahead, and I've found that the team that is ahead early is often ahead throughout a lot of the match. So I think speedsters take a ton of priority on this new map. Next, I want to talk about an interesting change, and that is to the AFK detection in the game. Clearly, they are actually trying to crack down on people AFKing and idling in matches, and they're noticing it more often. Like, you'll actually get these notifications after a match they were idle, but just for like a period of the match, and they'll like reduce their fair play points, which I think is really cool. Like, if people are not playing, they need to be punished. But an interesting thing that happens is you can be hiding in a bush or waiting on a jump pad, and if you are there for too long, the game will start to move you, thinking that you are idle and have stopped playing. So this is just something to keep in mind as you are playing the match. If you're hiding in tall grass for a while, or if you're waiting on a jump pad for a while, be careful, because I think it's after like 10, maybe it's 15 seconds, the game can automatically move your character a little bit and you'll need to get back on that jump pad or get back in that tall grass. I had it happen to me multiple times. I think it's really good that they want to focus on AFK detection. Just be careful in some of these big moments, because you know, basically move around, be ready to do something. Also, there's some weird AFK thing happening with Comfey right now. I'm sure they'll fix it pretty soon, but my heart goes out to all the Comfey mains. Finally, I want to talk a little bit more about Groudon, when it's a good idea to take it, when it's a good idea not to. I do think that just like Ray, if you've KO'd 4 members of the enemy team or something like that, it's a good idea to get this objective off the map and give it to your squad. However, if you KO Groudon and now the entire enemy team is up, you need to be very careful about how you move towards these goal zones and look to score. One thing that's important is more allies standing on a goal zone means it's easier for you to score, right? You score faster. So if you move with your allies to a goal zone, you could more easily score in that goal zone with the increased scoring speed you get from the Groudon buff. There are other times though that you're going to want to take fights, because with the Groudon buff you are more powerful. The Groudon buff will increase all damage you do by 50%. Shout out to the Unite math cord for figuring that out. It gives you a shield, which is 30% of your max HP plus 1,000, and you do increased damage, 50% increased damage. It is massive, especially on some of these Pokemon that carry super hard. You also get some team-wide experience when you KO Groudon that can be very, very important. So you're gonna need to decide how you want to play the moments before and after Groudon, because it's very different from Ray. You can't just run to a goal zone the second you get there, hit the score button, and you know, you're pretty much golden, right? That's just not happening anymore. You could fight with an ally, try to score, and then try to move on. That's probably your best case scenario in a lot of these moments after Groudon. Another interesting thing to notice is if you are ahead, you may not want to give up any of your advantage by moving towards the enemy goal zones at all. Because if they KO 1 or 2 of your members, all of a sudden, you have massive respawn timers and they are moving towards your goal zones with this increased score speed. Something else to notice near these end game fights is that bottom goal zone has 120 in it now, which means full pocket score will not break that goal zone, I guess, unless you're phalanx, right? But a full pocket score will only do 100 to it. So those moments where you knew an ally was walking to the bottom and they would break it, so that meant you could walk towards the center, are actually different now. You need to kind of keep your head on a swivel in these moments, and you need to make sure that they would actually break the goal before you position yourself to move towards that main goal zone and score there. There's so much to talk about with the new map. I feel like I could go on, and I've talked your ear off a lot, but here are just some big tips that are going to help you with the Groudon map. As the meta continues to develop, I'll talk more about it. I have a new guide that I'm going to be making for beginning and returning players with just a lot of good game stuff, but until this map has settled a little bit, I want to wait before putting that out, because just like we saw the other day, they kind of quickly changed Regidrago, and I want to make sure that we don't have that before I have like a big video like that. But there you go. I hope these tips helped you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I love you. I'll see you all next time. We did it.